ever got yourself into a sticky situation while traveling? How did you get out of it, and what would you do differently next time? Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Travel Pointers, the podcast for Australian frequent flyers. It's the 5th of May 2025, and I'm Matt Graham, the editor of Australian Frequent Flyer.
And I'm Wilson McTaggart, a writer at AFF and part of the Frequent Flyer concierge team.
In this episode, we'll talk about what happens when travel goes wrong, the travel mistakes that we've made, the problems we've come across, and how we'd avoid them in the future. But first, here's a quick wrap-up of the latest airline and loyalty program news headlines from the past few weeks. Firstly, Malaysia Airlines is resuming flights from Kuala Lumpur to Brisbane later this year, and it's also adding a third daily flight each to Sydney and Melbourne. And there's a fair bit of classic reward availability as well, including in business class, so get in now if you want to book some reward seats, including with Qantas points. Thailand now requires inbound passengers to complete a digital arrival card. AMP Bank has launched a new bank account that lets you earn Qantas points on the balance. And around the same time, Bankwest has announced that it will be discontinuing its popular Qantas transaction account, which did also let you earn Qantas points on the balance and also on each transaction you make on the debit card that comes with that account. Qantas has started construction of its new lounge at Auckland Airport. In the meantime, business class passengers, as well as Platinum and Platinum 1 frequent flyers, are being reaccommodated in the Emirates Lounge, which has extended its opening hours during the construction period. And other Qantas passengers who are eligible for lounge access are being sent to the Strata Lounge. Qantas will open its new lounge in Auckland early next year, and it should be a welcome upgrade. Meanwhile, Qantas has just switched the lounge it uses at Vancouver Airport from the Air France Lounge to the Cathay Pacific Lounge, a huge improvement, and there's a great noodle bar in that lounge. And there's been a bunch of changes to lounge access arrangements in Bangkok Airport. All the airline lounges have stopped accepting priority pass, and they did this all at the same time, which says it's probably an airport rule rather than the airline lounges just deciding to do this. And some of the lounges belonging to alliance-based airlines have also stopped accepting passengers flying with other airlines in that alliance. For example, there's been a few people that have been denied access to the Cathay Pacific Lounge when flying on other oneworld airlines, although that seems to have been fixed now. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on over at Bangkok Airport. Well, let's get into the main discussion, Wilson. Wilson, what's the worst travel mistake that you've made so far in all of your travels?
So far, there's been a few already. I'm not going to sit
we're
around
not
and
that
say
old
that.
too.
It's kind of a bit of a worrying trend. The number one sort of travel mistake I've made is a really sort of stupid one. I didn't check the processing times for a e-visa application to Vietnam. So the website that you apply for a tourist visa to Vietnam is pretty garbage, to be perfectly honest. It looks like a bit of a scam, and there's a bit of fine print sitting around here and there, but for some reason I just didn't think to check in advance that it'd require effectively manual processing. And so about 72 hours before my flight, I kind of had it's not a light bulb moment, is it? When you panic, and then applied for the visa. Then it didn't get approved when my flight was departing. And so the only way I was able to get on that flight was to book a connecting flight from Vietnam to a destination with visa-free entry at the airport. That was the only way I was allowed to get on that flight. And once I got to Vietnam, the visa still hadn't come through. And so I also faced the added challenge of Vietjet, who I flew to Vietnam. They wouldn't allow any passengers to transit from their plane or them flying to a different airline, even though I didn't have any checked baggage whatsoever. So they just wouldn't allow transit passengers on from one airline connecting to a different airline. Apparently, that's a Vietnam rule. I wasn't really in a position to argue. But luckily, I had an eSIM, and so the visa actually came through while I was sitting around in this sort of holding area, just with a few other people who had also got caught out booking separate connecting flights or visas not coming through properly. I got very lucky. The visa came through. I got the email and was luckily let into the country after sitting around for about 3 hours.
That's the last thing you want when you've just arrived on a red-eye flight as well.
Yeah, that's actually the flight that I reviewed on AFF. You can check out the review if you want. If you have read the review, you'll know I wasn't overly happy with that flight. It's probably up there with one of the worst I've ever had. So it was a bit of icing on on a cake. Not a great cake, but
But hey, the flight was cheap, right?
yeah, exactly. Like you pay for what you get, and in my case, it just gotta you gotta watch out. But yeah, have you had something similar, or is it?
Well, I'm pretty careful with visa related things, but we'll come. I think we'll come back to this
Thanks, Matt.
shortly. But I think that, but I'm no, I've definitely haven't had a completely smooth run with that kind of stuff as well. Probably the worst mistake that I've made while traveling was I left my passport on the plane, and unfortunately, it was a flight within Schengen, like within Europe, and so I didn't need to show my passport when I got off the plane. There was no like border control at the other end, and so I actually left the airport, went to a different city, had breakfast, had a shower, and like about 3-4 hours later, I realized, oh no, I didn't know where
I'm
my passport
guessing
was.
that "oh no" wasn't the words that came out of your mouth then.
No, no, no. That's a fair comment. And by this time, obviously the plane had already, gone and operated another flight, and I didn't initially actually remember where my passport was at all. But I did realize after I thought about it, and I remembered that when I got on that plane. So basically, this was a flight from Paris to Amsterdam, leaving quite early in the morning, and there was just they were checking people's passports when we got on the plane, so I would have got my passport out. And when I sat down on the plane, without thinking, I put my passport in the seat pocket in the seat in front of me. And this, yeah, and this is a for anyone who's flown on the KLM 737s, the seat pockets are like made of a blue material that you cannot see through. So when I got off the plane, I was tired, I wasn't really thinking, and I just left it there. And my boarding pass was also in it. Yeah, so by the time I realized it, yeah, it was probably about 4 hours since I'd got off the plane, and I really panicked. So I tried calling the airline, and they basically just put me through to an answering machine and said, "We'll get back to you in 14 business days." So that
Oh,
wasn't really an option. I tried contacting them on social media, and they just said, "Oh, sorry, we can't help with that. Like, please fill out this online form." The kind of thing. They'll get back to me in maybe a month. I wasn't buying. I needed my passport back. So what I did is
generally
I
speaking,
yeah,
very useful thing to have. Did you
yeah.
end
So
up like
I
tracking the plane or
that's exactly
just?
what I did. So the first thing I did was I went back to the airport. I got on a train, went back to the airport. I just thought once I'm back there, it'll be easier to deal with this kind of stuff. Thankfully it was a KLM flight, and I was in Amsterdam, so which is their hub, obviously. So I did look up the registration of the aircraft. I tracked it on Flight Radar 24, and I saw that the aircraft at the time that I was on my way to the airport was just returning from a flight from Vienna. So the aircraft would be landing back in Amsterdam. When I got to the airport, I went to the lost and found desk, and I told them, I think I left my passport in the seat pocket of seat 20A. I still remember the seat number. This was in 2019, I think. So
Wow.
obviously, it's firmly planted in my memory. This particular day, it was probably one of the most stressful days of my life. I tell them, look, it's going to be arriving at this gate at this time. Can you please send someone to check the seat pocket and see if my passport's there? And they did, and they said it's not there. And my heart sank. And it's like, okay, so where could it be? Because then you don't know. Like, did a cleaner find it and hand it into lost property? Did my thought was the passenger who was sitting there on the next flight probably would have found it, and maybe they handed it in to someone in Vienna. So, but like I didn't know, obviously. And yeah, so I spent basically the entire afternoon just trying to basically with the lost and found people trying to track it down. They sent me down to the police station in the bottom of Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam to the lost passport section, and like unfortunately they had no record of my passport, so no one had handed it in Amsterdam. But they did let me go through the drawer of lost passports just in case it was there. Basically, they opened up this big filing cabinet, and there was hundreds and hundreds of lost passports in there.
Wow.
And they basically just let me look at and just sort of see is
Did you
mine there.
find any unique ones or?
I don't remember. I didn't go through every single. I was just looking for the covers, looking for an Australian one.
Of course, of course.
But no, it wasn't there. I tried pleading with the lost and found people. Can you contact the passenger who sat there on the next flight and ask them if they saw it, or it's in. Can you contact? And I asked, can you contact the cleaners in Vienna who might have cleaned the plane during the turnaround? Unfortunately, yeah, nowhere to be found. Anyway, so I ended up contacting the Australian embassy and like finding out, okay, how do I get an emergency passport? Like, what's the deal? And it basically the short version is it was really bad if I didn't get this passport back. Like really, really quite bad. It was completely messed up my next month worth of travel. So yeah, and then and the plane ended up doing, I think another round trip to somewhere else. When it came back to Amsterdam, there was a new crew on board. I basically pleaded with the lost and found people, can you please check again? It hasn't turned up anywhere else. I don't know where else it could be. Can you just check again on the plane? And this was probably like, so I would have got off that plane at 8 a.m. I got back to the airport sort of early afternoon. This was by this time it was around 7 p.m.
It's been a bit of
They
a long day at that stage.
Oh, I was so stressed, and this new crew found it, thank goodness. But by the time they found it, the next flight had already boarded. They'd shut the door and they disconnected the air bridge. So what ended up happening was the pilot opened the window of the cockpit, threw it down to a ground staff member, and they managed to get it back to me so that my passport wouldn't be stuck on this plane, which was operating its, I think, its last flight for the day to Billund or somewhere where it was going to overnight out, away from the base. But thankfully, I got it back. But that was really stressful. The day after that happened, I bought a new Belroy travel wallet, which has basically a space in it for my passport. And my passport firmly stays there now, so that I know exactly where it is. And I'm also, I think this has kind of affected me. Like whenever I get on off a plane now, I always like triple check the seat pocket and like all around the seat in case I left anything, because I'm so worried that I might do the same thing. But yes, not a great experience. Have you had a similar experience, Wilson?
Yeah, no, I have left the passport in the seat back pocket. Flying WestJet from it was Calgary to no, sorry, it was Vancouver to Toronto, and
Okay, so
it was a
another
bit of
domestic flight.
another domestic flight. I didn't need my passport, getting off the plane in Toronto, but I did realize before I even entered the baggage claim area. I had got off the gate, departed the gate area, but luckily I did realize and was able to track down a staffer pretty quick and said, "Here's my seat number." I think my seat number was 4 Alpha.
Right.
So yeah,
Did you
so
get it back?
I got it back
Oh, thank
just
goodness.
then, which was good. And I have also obviously in when you're traveling, you need your passport sometimes for ID, and so
Hmm.
I have to pull out my passport to show that yes, I legally can drink alcohol, which is always good. Pull that out, and I've left it on a table in a Berlin restaurant. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the restaurant in Berlin, but I didn't realize till the next day. Absolute panic, obviously, then, and caught the train straight to the restaurant. Um, Tracked down. Like, luckily, they had picked it up off the table and remembered me, I guess, and that was all good then. But some close calls, that's for sure.
I remember once, it wasn't my passport or anything like that, but I remember once leaving a fairly expensive pair of sunglasses on the table at a restaurant in the Netherlands, and I didn't realize until about 4 or 5 days later, and I was already out of the country. But I called the restaurant just in case, like, because I thought I probably had left them at this place once I realized they were missing. Being winter in Europe, I hadn't needed my sunglasses for 5 days up to that
Yeah,
point. So I
that's pretty
took
standard.
took a while to realize. I know I called them and I said, "Oh, I left these sunglasses," and the lady on the phone is like, "Oh, do you mean these Ray Bans that I have next to me?" And I've been waiting for someone to call and claim them. It's like, yes, those are the ones. So they're pretty good with that kind of stuff.
No, that's good. Taking care of your passport is always important. I
Oh,
have
so important.
traveled with a friend. Well, actually, you and I both traveled with this mutual friend, I guess.
Hmm.
And he decided to wash his passport. Clean passports are useful. Putting it through a washing machine, less so.
When you say decided to, I mean I guess you mean very much didn't decide to, but
I don't think there was a whole lot of decision making involved. Yeah, it may have been accidental. And for context, if you don't know what happens if you wash your passport, it tends to I can't really describe it. It sort of blows up a bit. The paper, the pages don't fold together at all. It can become tattered. It looks very suspicious, frankly.
does the magnetic, like the magnetic sort of strip in the middle page of the passport, does that still work if it's been run through a washing machine?
I haven't actually tested it. I don't
Please
personally
don't.
know. I'd rather not. As far as I'm aware, well, he was allowed to enter where he needed to go. We were traveling out of Kazakhstan at the time, and he got stopped and put into a room and questioned because, well, his passport looked like um, someone had put it together with a bit of tape and glue. That's exaggerating a bit, but you get the general idea.
Wasn't in great condition.
No, but he was
Did,
allowed
did
out
they?
of
Did they?
Kazakhstan.
Okay. Did he apply for a new passport when he got home?
He has got a new passport since,
Oh, that's
thankfully,
good. Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story so far is keep an eye on your passport, but we've got lots more to talk
Yeah.
about. We'll come back after this quick break.
AFF has plenty of resources for you to up your frequent flyer game, such as this podcast, but also articles, training courses, and webinars. But Matt, is there something else that can really take your skills to the next level?
I'm glad you asked, Wilson. There is. We're going to be hosting our first ever AFF masterclass, which is an in-person day of sort of training seminars and workshopping, where you can really learn about the all of the skills you need to up your frequent flyer game. And it's going to be in Sydney on the 6th of September 2025. It's a Saturday. We'd love to see you there. Tickets are available now. We are going to I'll be talking there. You'll be also speaking, Wilson.
Yep, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And we'll have also a very experienced travel agent talk about some of the tips you need to know on doing some really cool stuff with airfares as well, around the world tickets and things like that. So there'll be lots of information. We'll cover the Qantas and Velocity programs, various international programs, tricks to really maximize frequent flyer programs, lots of other cool stuff. And you'll get to meet also some very interesting people. So we hope to see you there. Tickets are available on sale now. You can have a look in the show notes for a link to more information about that. And if you're an AFF Platinum member, we do also have a very good discount for you. So we hope to see you there. Wilson, when you're traveling, do you tend to print out your flight and hotel bookings?
I don't, even though I probably should. I keep them nice and organized in email folders, but I'm very, very reliant on my phone. So it could open itself up to issues. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't print absolutely everything. I don't want to waste paper, but like particularly when I'm traveling into another country, like you never know at the border if you might get asked for an onward flight booking or a hotel booking at your destination, that kind of thing. So I do try and print out sort of the most important documents. And in general, I haven't had too many issues, but I did have an issue recently traveling to somewhere in West Africa where on arrival I got asked for my hotel booking, and of course I did have a hotel booking. I was traveling with a friend. We were going to share the room, and we had a booking that we made through booking.com. What I didn't realize before this was that the printout that I got from booking.com, it was basically just the booking.com confirmation, didn't have a name on it. It just had, it had all the details of the hotel. It had the dates, the name of the hotel, the price, and all this. For whatever reason, I don't know if this is a normal thing with booking.com or not. To be honest, I've never really paid attention to this until now. It didn't have a name on it. And in any case, the hotel was booked by my friend. So like if it would have had a name, it would have had my friend's name, but it would have said 2 adults on the booking. So I arrived at the border. They didn't accept this hotel booking with no name on it, and they made me wait for a long time on the side while they processed everyone else from the flight, and then took me around the back to the police station, around the back of the airport, and questioned me about my hotel booking. And basically, apparently what they wanted to do was check that it was legitimate. I'm not 100% sure that they weren't just trying to sort of make it out that there was some issue so that they could ask for some sort of contribution, shall we say. But
Donation.
Uh, you can probably see where I'm going with this,
involuntary, perhaps, but
anyway, I wasn't going to do that. So I explained to them like 3 or 4 times that the booking is in the name of my friend. My friend had already been processed. He was waiting for me in the baggage claim, and we didn't have any internet. So he was like, this took well over an hour, and he had no idea what was going on. So it was quite stressful for him as well. And in the end, they sort of just let me through. It was a bizarre experience. And then they did also ask me for my onward flight booking, which I had, and a bunch of other stuff, which I also had. I'm very glad that I did have all of this. I guess the point that I'm making is, it's probably more important for some countries than others, but make sure your documents are in order. This particular country also required a yellow fever certificate for arrival from the place where I was coming from. If I wouldn't have had that, I don't know what would have happened, but I don't think it would have been good things. So I do check very carefully like what documents are required, and I do try and have like printouts of things as well. Like you never know when your phone's going to fail at the the worst
Yes,
possible time, or
exactly.
you're not going to have Wi-Fi or whatever. But yeah, what about Wilson? Have you ever had your bags go missing?
I have a few times. I don't tend to travel with checked baggage, maybe out of a slight paranoia that bags will go missing. The few times I have traveled with checked luggage, there often has been times where bags have been at least delayed, if not um, missing completely. One time, quite relatively recently, was traveling from Vienna to Cairo via Madrid on Iberia, and I know that you've had your own experiences with Iberia, and I'm sure we'll cover that in a second. Um, and the bag, obviously, I had to check it in. My flight from Vienna to Madrid was delayed, and so I needed to get to Cairo that night. And the only solution for Iberia was to put me on a flight to Rome because I missed my Madrid Cairo flight thanks to the inbound from Vienna being delayed. So they put me on a flight to Rome and then Rome to Cairo from there. I was hoping my bag would be put on that Madrid to Rome flight. It was not. And I made the rookie error of not putting an AirTag in my checked luggage, um,
Ooh.
which is it was a bit it's a bit disappointing actually.
Did you get your bag back?
Yeah, eventually I did. The agent in Cairo managed to track it down. It was still in Madrid, and they sent it out on a Qatar Airways flight all the way back to Sydney. By that time, I'd returned home to Australia, and so they sent it out on Qatar Airways. I had to obviously drive to Sydney Airport, but I got my bag safe and sound. I probably could have claimed compensation. I'm not sure. I didn't want to chance it. Or more accurately, I wasn't bothered. I didn't think there was a great chance of success.
Well, I mean, yeah, to be honest, you probably could have claimed EU 261 compensation. For those who don't know, that's a European Union regulation where the airlines operating in Europe basically are required to pay cash compensation to passengers if you are delayed more than a certain number of hours at your to your final destination, or if your flight gets cancelled at short notice, or you're downgraded or bumped, things like that. Unfortunately, that's how it works in theory. I had a misconnection with Iberia a few months ago. I was flying from actually to Vienna. I was flying from Lisbon to Vienna via Madrid, and Iberia had sold me a 45-minute connection in Madrid. The inbound flight from Lisbon was slightly delayed. We arrived in Madrid, parked actually right next to the plane that was boarding to Vienna. But by the time I was sitting sort of in, I think I was in the exit row, so in the middle of the plane. By the time I got off the plane, ran to the next gate, which was just next door. They'd already closed the flight. They offloaded me, and I had to go the next day. So I arrived in Vienna about 12 hours late. I did try and claim EU 261 from Iberia, and they basically just wrote back to me and said, sorry for the inconvenience. And I said, no, 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 like I'm claiming this was a zone 2 flight, so €400. And they got back to me and said, no, sorry for the inconvenience. We've reviewed your case, but we need to stick with our original resolution, which was not a resolution at all. They didn't even address my question about compensation. I wrote to them again. They basically said, nope, sorry, extraordinary circumstances, which there were none. Basically,
Yep.
they're doing it. They're just stonewalling, and they want me to go away. I did write about this on AFF last week. You can have a read about that on AFF if you want. A lot of other Iberia passengers, not just me, a lot of other Iberia passengers have had exactly the same experience, and this goes back years. So this is looks to be Iberia's modus operandi. Like they just don't want to pay out, and they just hope that you go away. So
It's a
yeah,
bit of a problem with compensation schemes, and a little bit off topic, but the a compensation scheme is only useful if the airlines are forced to implement said compensation. And in Australia, obviously, we have barely any protections. So
we have
if
protections in Australia for this stuff.
protections is a very strong word, um, I would, yeah, I would strongly suggest that we can do a lot more. But that's a topic for another podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Just slightly off topic, AFF did write to the white paper consultation process, as did many other consumer groups in Australia, calling for a compensation scheme in Australia. The government did nothing about that, so that was quite disappointing. But yeah, that maybe a question for another time. Just on the topic of baggage, I am a huge fan now of AirTags. I won't check in a bag without an AirTag, especially if I'm on a connecting itinerary where there's higher potential for the bag to go missing. And I'm really careful now as well with booking tight connections. If I know that I'm going to check in a bag, if I can help it, I would rather book a longer connection. In the Madrid case that I spoke about just before, that was the only option, but yeah, your bag could always go missing. I also don't check valuables into my checked luggage or medicine or things like that, because you never know really if the bag might go missing. The chances are low, but it does happen, and it has happened to me like several times where you arrive and the bag's not there. So yeah, AirTags is really helpful, particularly if the airline doesn't know where your bag is either. I did have an experience a few years ago in the United States. I flew United in, and my bag, I had a connecting itinerary with a few stops. My bag didn't arrive at the final destination, and it took United over a week to find my bag. I didn't get it
Wow.
back for about 2 weeks, because by the time they found it, I was in the north of Canada, and so it was a bit of a
Oh.
logistical challenge to actually get it back to me. Um,
Did you get any compensation for that one?
I did get compensation. It took several months and a bit of negotiating on the phone with them, but they did give me $1,500 and a $200 travel credit and some miles as well for that.
Okay. Yeah.
So that at least is something. I did have to spend about $500 or $600 on just buying replacement clothes and things, because I literally, like, I didn't have any of my things for 2 weeks. But they
Yeah. The
did
north of
pay
Canada
out that.
is a bit cold as well. So,
It was yes. But yeah, the problem there was that they really didn't know where my bag was. If I at least would have had an AirTag in it, like it would have been very helpful. I remember I did finally track down the bag, and I arranged to pick it up from the United counter in Cincinnati, which is one of the places I was going on this trip. And when I arrived in Cincinnati, I went to the baggage counter, and they typed in my reference number and said, "Your bag's in Washington," which it wasn't. It was in Cincinnati. I went and had a look in the luggage room, and it was there. So their systems really failed. And at least with an AirTag, I could have
just
known where it
showing them
actually
right
was,
there.
because they clearly didn't.
Yep.
But yeah, another thing that has happened to me a couple of times was where I've arrived, late at night at a new destination, and the accommodation where I plan to stay has just not worked out. Like, actually, that same night that I arrived in Cincinnati, I arrived about midnight. It was on a quite late night flight. I had arranged to stay with a friend in the city. By the time I got to my friend's place, he was fast asleep and his door was locked, and he wasn't picking up his phone. So I basically, and this was back before also, eSIMs and things like that. So
Yeah.
I didn't have any internet connection. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning in downtown Cincinnati. I didn't feel that great walking around alone with my now two suitcases, since I just picked up the original one. Ended up checking. I just basically walked around until I found a hotel. It happened, I think it was a Hilton or something. I hate doing this, but I had no choice really. I basically went to the desk and said, "How much for a room for tonight?" And they told me some ridiculous price, like 300, $400. And I was like, "Fine, here's my credit
Oof.
card, whatever. I just want to sleep. I'll deal with it in the morning." When I got up to the room, by this time it was already after 2 a.m. I got up to the room. It wasn't even cleaned from the previous desk. Like, one of the beds, there
Oh,
was two beds in the
lovely.
room. One of the beds was unmade. The other one was made. So and there was like rubbish in the bin. There was like condoms lying around. It was not great. Honestly, it was 2:30. I just wanted to sleep. I went to the bed that looked like it had been not used, and I just wanted to deal with it in the morning. When I checked out the next morning, the lady in the reception asked me, "Oh, how was your stay?" And I just said, "Look, I don't like to complain, but the room wasn't actually clean." And like, there was rubbish on the floor, the bed was, and then she stopped me mid sentence. She said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I won't charge you for tonight."
Oh,
So I
wow.
ended up actually not paying for that room. So that was a lucky break.
Yeah, I can't really say it's not fair enough considering their failures, but still, it's pretty rare for a big multinational hotel chain to be generous with its guests.
I think they were worried I was going to leave a bad review, to be honest.
Yeah,
and in
yeah.
fairness, I let them off the hook with that one. Um,
Oh, that's
yeah,
fair. Tit
there
for
was
tat.
another yeah there was another time of like quite a few years ago where I arrived in a city in Kazakhstan which I'd never been to before. Again at night, I had booked a hostel. When we took the taxi to the hostel, when we got there, this place didn't exist. It seems like they'd closed down months ago, and with no internet, nothing or anything like that. Like the taxi driver basically was like, "Do you want to stay at my friend's place?" in in very very broken English, and so he took us to like a random guest house where the bed was, well, it was a plank of wood, so it was not the most comfortable, but whatever. We slept for the night, checked out the next morning, and just found a real hotel. But this kind of stuff happens. If we would have had eSIMs, like, or access to the internet, it would have been much easier. So now with the onset of eSIMs, like it's a really great invention. I wouldn't travel without one.
Oh god, yeah. It's so it's vital now. Like just even for I guess less dramatic circumstances, just like finding your way around cities with maps and like looking up where to eat. It's just so useful now. It's part of I guess the a traveler's toolkit for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago in Paraguay, in an Uber to the airport, the driver got about halfway and then sort of stopped, pulled over the side of the highway out to the airport in the middle of nowhere, and he's like basically telling me, "I don't have the right document to enter the airport. I can't continue the trip. Get out, please." And without an eSIM,
Right.
I would have been completely screwed without without the ability
Yeah.
to call a taxi or another Uber or something. So,
Yeah.
definitely a
Wow.
good thing to have.
Yeah.
Have you ever needed to
100%.
claim on travel insurance, Dawson?
I've been very lucky so far. I've never had to claim on travel insurance. I have always taken out travel insurance, no matter
Mm.
the trip. If it's international in Australia, I don't feel the need to. Obviously, Medicare and private health covers the important things, but yeah, I whether it's credit cards, complimentary insurances, or a specific cover, I've always gone with travel insurance. It's just a non-negotiable.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do use where it works. I use my credit card travel insurance. It's a good benefit if if it meets your needs. Obviously you need to check what the actual conditions of the policy are. There is an article on AFF comparing the different credit card travel insurance offered by the different Australian banks on their various cards. So you can have a look at that. There's the differences are basically in things like the maximum trip duration. Like some of them is 30 days, some of them is 6 months. So there's quite a difference there. They're also like whether they cover travel to destinations that are marked as Recon City or need to travel by Smart Traveler, things like that, and also whether activities like skiing or cruising and things like that are covered. So obviously do your research, but they can work, and obviously it can save you a fair bit of money as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, you do have to check that it's effectively activated, for lack of a better term, the
Mm.
conditions to for your trip to be eligible. A lot of credit card travel insurance products they need the outbound flights to be purchased on that credit card, which or it might be that you just spend $500 in prepaid travel expenses or something like that.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And a lot of the insurances as well require that you have a return ticket back to Australia before you leave as well.
Yes, yes,
But yeah, definitely can be useful. And of course, if that doesn't cover you, you always have the option to buy a policy as well. I also wouldn't travel overseas without it. You never know if you slip over and break your leg or something, or whatever. Have a heart attack. There's all sorts of things, particularly medical related things that could happen. You could end up with a bill that you can't afford to pay in a foreign hospital. That's really not a situation that I ever want to be in. Um, Luckily, the only time so far, touch wood, that I've had to claim on travel insurance was for things like cancelled or delayed flights where I've been stuck overnight and needed to book a hotel or something, and the airline wouldn't pay. So like because it's where if there's some sort of storm or whatever it might be. And each time the insurance has paid out. Just obviously make sure you keep your receipts. And if anything does go wrong when you're traveling, it's probably a good idea to call the travel insurance company first and ask what's covered and what you need to, what evidence you need. You might need a letter from the airline if it's a weather delay or things like that.
yeah.
But yeah, definitely a good thing to have. Well, Wilson, those are just some of the many, many things that could go wrong when you travel. I mean, and of course, we're not meaning to put you off traveling with this discussion. Like, there is so many great things you can get out of travel as well. Like, you and I both really, really enjoy it. It's absolutely worth doing, but just, things can go wrong. You just got to be prepared, have insurance, and, have a plan of what you're going to do when things go wrong, and obviously do your best to mitigate the risks when you do travel. We have a thread on the Australian Frequent Flyer forum called "Made Any Travel Mistakes Lately." It's got hundreds and hundreds of travel stories and different posts from members on our forum. If you've made a particularly funny, maybe not funny, big, small travel mistake, whatever it is, we'd love to hear about it. You can find a link to this thread in the show notes for this episode. Have you made any travel mistakes lately? And we'd love to hear about what you've done and what your experiences are on the AFF forum. You can read, of course, as well about the experiences of lots of other frequent flyers and travelers as well. So have a look in the show notes for that. Otherwise, that's all for this episode of Travel Pointers. We can't wait to see you again for the next episode. And until then, happy flying.
Thanks for listening.